In previous lessons, you learned how to create basic reports by using SAS procedures. In SAS, the proc step is the primary method of creating reports. In this lesson, you learn to enhance the way that information is arranged and formatted in your reports. By adding statements to your programs that generate reports, you can change the settings of SAS system options that affect report layout, specify titles and footnotes, add temporary labels and formats, and subset and group observations. You can use the statements covered in this lesson with many different reporting procedures in SAS. In this lesson, you'll use proc print, proc freq, and proc means. Here's what you learned in this lesson. Creating reports is one of many SAS operations that are controlled by SAS system options. SAS system options are instructions that affect your SAS session. Your operating environment determines which SAS system options are available at your site. All SAS system options have default settings that SAS uses unless you specify otherwise. When you run a basic proc step, like the proc print step shown here, the appearance of the output is determined, in part, by the default settings of SAS system options. Many of the SAS system options for procedure output affect only listing output, not HTML output. Some of the options covered in this lesson also affect the appearance of the SAS log.
Let's create a report by using the default settings of SAS system options. This program creates two reports that display data about sales employees at Orion Star. In the proc print step, the var statement specifies the four variables that will appear in the report. In the proc freq step, the table statement specifies a frequency table for the variable country. Let's submit the code. Now let's look at the listing output in the output window. First, we'll scroll to the top of the proc print report to see the information that appears by default. After the heading, the SAS system, is the date and time. This is the date and time that you started your SAS session. By default, SAS prints this same date and time on all reports that you create in one session. On the far right is a page number. By default, SAS numbers all pages of output in sequence throughout the entire SAS session, starting with 1. Later in this lesson, you'll learn how to reset the date and time and the page number for a report. SAS system options determine the width of the output, the line size, as well as the number of lines per page of output, the page size. Now let's scroll to the bottom of the first page. Notice that 50 observations appear on this page by default. The default line size and page size vary according to your operating environment and the version of SAS that you're using. Let's scroll up to the top again and look at the alignment of text in the report. Notice that SAS centers the heading, the SAS system, and the data table by default. The other information at the top extends to the right edge of the page. Now let's take a quick look at the top of the Proc Freq report. Notice that this report shows the same information at the top and is aligned the same way. The default SAS Now let's take a quick look at the top of the Proc Freq report. Notice that this report shows the same information at the top and is aligned the same way. The default SAS system option settings apply to the listing output from all reporting procedures. Now let's look at the HTML output in the Results Viewer window. Here's a question. What information at the top of the listing output does not appear in this HTML output? The date and time and the page number do not appear in an HTML report. In addition, the SAS system option settings for line size and page size do not affect HTML output. In fact, as we scroll down, notice that the HTML output has no page breaks. Of the SAS system options we've discussed, the only one that applies to both HTML and listing output is centering. Notice that the HTML report is also centered. Keep in mind that your site might use different settings for some SAS system options. If your site's settings are different, any output that you generate on your own might not look exactly like the output that's shown in this demonstration.
Here's the proc print report that you saw in the previous demonstration. Suppose you want to change the appearance of this report. At the top, you want to remove the date and the page. To remove the date and the page number that SAS displays by default. You want to set the page size to 15 lines and the line size to 80 characters. You also want to left align the contents of the report. Here's what you want the modified report to look like. To make these changes, you can change the settings of SAS system options. To modify SAS system options, you can submit an option statement. The option statement is a global statement, so you can place it anywhere in your SAS program. However, it is good programming practice to place an option statement outside of data and proc steps so that your programs are easier to read and debug. The syntax of the option statement is simple. Following the keyword options, you specify one or more SAS system options that you want to change, separated by a space. In this example, the option statement specifies 5 options. In this example, the option statement specifies 5 options. Some system options consist of just an option name, such as no date. Other system options consist of an option name and a value, such as PS equals 15. When you change the settings of SAS system options, your new settings remain in effect until you change the settings again or until you end your SAS session. Here's the basic proc print step and report that we're going to work on. Above the proc print step, we'll add an option statement. Now, let's look at the SAS system options that you'll specify to enhance your report. To specify whether or not the date and time appear at the top of your listing output, you use either the date system option or the no date system option. By default, date is in effect. To specify that the date and time not appear, you add no date to the option statement. To specify whether or not the page number appears at the top of listing output, you use either the number system option or the no number system option. Number is the default setting, so you specify no number to remove the page number from your report. To specify the number of lines in a page of listing output, you use the page size equals SAS system option. For this option, you must specify both the option name and a value. The value n specifies the number of lines that you want to appear on one page. If you prefer, you can use the alias PS equals instead of page size equals. In this example, PS equals sets the page size to 15 lines. To specify the number of characters in a line, you use the line size equals system option. Here, n is a number of characters that you specify. Like the page size Here, n is a number of characters that you specify. Like the page size equals option, line size equals also has an alias. In the example, ls equals now sets the line size to 80 characters. There's just one more change to make to this program before we run it. You want to change the alignment in your report. The center and no center system options control alignment. Center is in effect by default. To left align the output, you add no center to the options statement.
Let's run the revised program and see how the new settings for SAS system options affect the appearance of the report. Here's the proc print report we created earlier in the output window. Let's switch to the editor window and add the option statement with the 5 options. Let's submit the code. Now we view the listing output again. Notice that the date and time and the page number no longer appear at the top of the report. Also, the report is now left aligned instead of centered. Let's look at the HTML output in the results viewer window. Notice that only the no center setting had an effect on this output. We're going to work with the date and time and the page number some more. So let's modify the program to display this information. Here's a question. To display the date and time and the page number again, how do we change the option statement? We need to remove no date and no number and add date and number. Before we resubmit this program, we can also remove PS equals, LS equals, and no center from the option statement. We set these options the first time we ran this program. Remember that SAS system option settings remain in effect until we change them or until the end of the SAS session. Let's run the modified program. Now let's look at the listing output. The date and time and the page number appear at the top of the report again.
Suppose you're still not quite satisfied with your proc print report. You've removed the date and page number and then displayed it again. But these are not the date and time or page number values that you want. Here's a question. What date and time does SAS display by default? By default, SAS displays the date and time that you started the current SAS session. So this report shows the same date and time as the report we created earlier in this SAS session. However, you want your reports to have a more accurate date and time stamp. You want the report to indicate the date and time that SAS created the report. So far, SAS has numbered every page of output consecutively, but you want the first page of your report to be numbered 1. Here's the SAS program as it appeared at the end of the last demonstration. We've already submitted the date and number options, so they're now in effect. Let's delete these options from the options statement. Now, let's see which SAS system options enable you to change the values that SAS uses by default for the date and time and the page number. We'll add the new options to the options statement in this program. To update the date and time that SAS displays at the top of reports, you use the Date Reset System option or the No Date Reset System option. No Date Reset, which is the default setting, specifies that SAS use the same date and time on all reports throughout the session. After you specify Date Reset, SAS updates the date and time on every report that you create later in the same session. In this program, let's add Date Reset to the options statement. To reset a page number, you use the Page No Equals System option. The value n specifies the beginning page number for the next page of output. In this program, Page No Equals specifies the page number 1.
Now let's create a modified report that displays the date and time that SAS created the report and that starts on page number 1. Here's the output that we created at the end of the last demonstration. Notice the date and time and the page number. These values will change. In the editor window, the settings DT Reset and Page No Equals 1 now appear in the option statement. Let's submit the revised program. Here's the new output. Notice that the date and time have changed. Also, the page number is now 1.
Now, try answering a question about SAS system options. Now, try practicing in your SAS software. Suppose you've written a program that creates reports for the Human Resources Department at Orion Star. For the first report, you want to include a proc means step that shows the mean salary for Orion Star sales employees. The HTML output for your proc means step is shown here. You can see the standard title that SAS displays on reports by default. You'd like to add a title that is specific to your proc means report, as shown. Also, at the bottom of the report, you want to display the 2 footnotes shown here, with a blank line in between. In the same program, you want to include a proc freak step that shows how many Orion Star sales employees are female and how many are male. This second report requires a different title, Sales Employees by Gender. Here, you want to keep the first footnote, but you don't want to display any other footnotes. In your SAS reports, you can specify up to 10 titles and 10 footnotes. Your titles and footnotes appear in both HTML output and listing output. In HTML output, titles appear at the top and footnotes appear at the bottom of the output from each procedure, no matter how long the output is. Listing output is divided into pages of a specified size, and your titles and footnotes appear at the top and bottom of each page, respectively. If you don't specify a title, the default title is The SAS System. No footnote appears unless you specify one. To specify a title, you use the title statement. To specify a footnote, you use the footnote statement. Aside from the keyword at the beginning, these 2 statements have the same syntax. Following the keyword, you specify a value for n, a number from 1 to 10 that indicates the line on which the title or footnote appears. In the title or footnote area, line 1 is the first line and line 10 is the last. If you don't specify a number, SAS assumes you're referring to line 1. Finally, within quotation marks, you specify the text that you want to appear in the title or footnote. You can use either a set of single quotation marks or a set of double quotation marks to enclose the text string. In this example, the title statement specifies the title, Orion Star Sales Salaries. Here's a question. On which title line will this title appear? The title statement does not specify a title number, so SAS displays the text on title line 1. In the second example, the footnote statement specifies the number 3. So the word confidential will appear on the third footnote line. You can specify only one title or footnote in a single statement. To specify multiple titles and multiple footnotes, you use multiple title and footnote statements. This example has multiple footnote statements. Remember that the title and footnote statements are global statements, so they can stand alone, outside a step. Notice that these footnote statements specify text for footnotes 1 and 3, but not for footnote 2. Here's a question. In this report, what do you think will appear on footnote line 2? If you skip a footnote or title number, SAS leaves the skipped line blank. In the output from this program, footnote 2 will be blank. You'll see this in the next demonstration. In this example, notice that the title statement appears inside the proc means step. This title statement would have the same effect if you placed it before the proc means step. Any titles or footnotes that you assign remain in effect until you change them, cancel them, or end your SAS session. When you're comfortable creating basic titles and footnotes, you can add more advanced elements. For example, you can insert the date and time. For information about adding the date and time to your titles and footnotes by using macro variables, click Details.
Now let's run the program we've been looking at to see what our title and footnotes look like. The program that generates the proc means report is shown in the editor window. Our report should have one title and footnotes on lines 1 and 3 at the bottom. Let's submit the program. First, let's look at the HTML output in the Results Viewer window. Notice that the custom title Orion Star Sales Salaries appears at the top. At the bottom, the two custom footnotes appear on lines 1 and 3. Line 2 is blank. Now, let's see how titles and footnotes appear in the listing output for this report. The same title appears at the top. Scrolling down, we see that the two footnotes appear at the bottom, with a blank line between. You've learned that any titles or footnotes that you assign remain in effect until you change them, cancel them, or end your SAS session. In the editor window, let's add a proc freak step for our second report, and then see what happens when we submit it. We want to show how many sales employees are in each gender group. We submit the revised program. Now let's look at the HTML output for the second report. Once again, Orion's Once again, Orion Star